Thanks so much for watching, and thanks even more for being patient. I've been missing in action for a couple of months with good reason, because I'm running out of room over here in the studio. Room for tools that I want to have, and room for stuff that I want to do. So in order to get things set up for the months ahead, I have completely finished up the workshop next door. Completely finished up. I'm like 94% there. But I didn't want to half-ass anything over there. I didn't want to half-ass any videos. So for that reason I just took a couple of months off actually to finish that up. Right now we're back to making videos. So cool paint jobs I think also coming, so I have a lot of different projects lined up. Some lowrider stuff, some crawler stuff, some big scale stuff as well. I will also reintroduce Workshop Wednesday, because I've done a couple of modifications here in the studio too that I want to show you. And with that, I think that for the years ahead, the content of this channel and the future of this channel is sort of secured. Anyway, in the meantime, this thing was introduced. This is the Element RC Enduro Utron. I keep wanting to say Ultron, like the Avengers movie, but it is a Utron. This is an entry-level truck. I believe it costs 299 bucks. It is very much like the Enduro Sport Edition that I have showed you a couple of months ago. This thing, we will run it as well in this video. It's currently summer, it's pretty nice weather, so we will be taking it out for a spin. And those Sport Editions, they are just a more budget-friendly version of the Enduro series that you are perhaps already used to. Now, how do they make them budget-friendly? You will see, for example, that this looks like a Toyota FJ, with the exception of everything that's going on over here, because it's a pickup version of a Toyota FJ. And I'm thinking that the opinions are completely divided about whether this looks good or not. I like it because this will just give you some extra room for your own interpretation on what you want to have going on the back over here. Perhaps you want to have like a utility rack, perhaps you want to put a swimming pool in there, perhaps you want to turn this into a camper, I don't know. Everything is possible. So with that, I'm thinking that it doesn't look bad at all. It is a bit more stretched if you compare it to a full-sized Toyota FJ Cruiser, but then again, you know, this one is not licensed. So I'm thinking that I read somewhere that if it were to be a complete replica of a full-sized FJ Cruiser, that the wheelbase would be 11.8 inches and currently it's 12.8, which is way more accommodating if you want to change bodies on this truck in the future. The biggest feat is the new independent front suspension. Like I mentioned, independent front suspension is cool, and seeing it come stock and come fully functional on a truck like this is really impressive. Element RC have had independent front suspension in the past as well, but the ground clearance on this one is far better. So you have seen it, for example, on the Night Runner. They had an independent front suspension kit that I threw on my very first Enduro Sendero, just to see how that functioned, and it had some limitations. And from what I feel and what I've been reading and what I've been seeing, all of those limitations have disappeared with the introduction of this IFS 2 system. Let's have a look at the exterior first. I'm liking this body. I really have nothing against it, even with the window stickers being installed and most likely a non-transparent shell behind them. I'm not really hating on it, because the body shell is one of the items that people will change out the first. This is, in my opinion, a successful looking body. It does really replicate a lot of those lines that are so characteristic for a Toyota FJ Cruiser. So it really leaves no doubt on where they got their inspiration from. Also the tires, for example, these are the Pin Seeker tires, which is Element's own design. There again, no licensing fees are involved in making these. So with that, they really managed to keep the price point down. So you get some slick rock sliders over here, pretty beefy front and rear bumper with a lot of, we'll call it webbing going on behind what is essentially a tubular design. I know that Knight Customs is already developing, or has already developed, a few cool items to put on this truck, like for example a KC light bar, some high clearance fenders, and with that you can really transform this truck and make it look personalized, which is cool. Let's get some of these body clips out and take the shell off, see what we find underneath. Well, like I said, no transparent windows, which is a tiny bit of a bummer, but then again, you know, it's pretty easy to clear these if you want to get rid of the paint that is on those window sections. You can either use nitro fuel, you can use Lexan cleaner, so it's actually kind of paint prep from Tamiya, or you can wet sand it, for example, if you have none of those chemical things laying around. Wet sanding is also a good option just to get them cleared up. If you are familiar with Element's chassis, then this is not an unfamiliar looking truck to you. This is essentially the exact same as the Enduro Sport Edition, with of course the exception of the whole front end, because this one has independent front suspension and different tires. But apart from that, it is identical. So this one has the Stealth X F gearbox, and the F means that the motor doesn't sit pointing towards the back, but it actually sits pointing towards the front, making it a bit more realistic in how the weight is laid out, and also ensuring that you actually do have room for an interior in case you want to put one in. All of the electronics look really familiar. Also, as per Element, a nice pocket over here next to your steering servo for a servo winch, and room for a fairlead then in the front. So this steering servo is a 15 kilogram steering servo, which for a budget-friendly truck is pretty impressive. It does come with an aluminum servo horn, also stuff that you have already perhaps seen in, for example, the Night Runner. It has a 5-slot, 16-turn brushed motor, a familiar-looking ESC that is 3S capable, and also has 2 extra plugs that you can put some lights in if you choose to do so. It is already set up with this clever tab to accept LiPo batteries, but if you want to run it on nickel metal hydride, I'm not sure why on earth you would want to do that, but you could do that as well. This entire front end has been redesigned, where in the past people have had kind of a gripe at times with the lack of clearance that you had with this independent front suspension on the previous generation. They have absolutely solved that with this one. So I dare say it has more clearance in the front than it does in the back under the pumpkin, which is insane if you see the amount of components, suspension components that are going on in the front. It's just that they're laid out different. Where in the previous generation you had the steering hub on top of the bottom A-arm, it's been moved to sit underneath the bottom A-arm, and you can already see with me kind of mimicking that with my hands what happens then clearance wise, because the entire rest of the truck kind of moves up compared to where you have your wheels and where you would potentially have some clearance issues. So that is some really clever thinking. It also doesn't really have a lot of trouble with steering throw, or it doesn't feel obstructed in any way, where perhaps the previous version felt like a bit of an afterthought. This feels very well thought out. So you still have your drive shafts on top of your lower A-arm, but the rest of it is completely redesigned. So also where your suspension sits, how the steering actually functions, and then also the skid plate. So, cool stuff. I'm really curious to see how this performs. Seeing how cool this front end looks and how much clearance it offers really makes me curious as well to see if I can perhaps make a fully independent truck. So independent front and an independent rear, because I think it would be crazy capable. Anyway, let's charge a LiPo battery, throw that in here, and then take it out in the forest, see how it does in its natural environment. Well, I got the first couple of yards in with this truck, and so far I'm really surprised. Usually you really sense that there is like a lot of limitations, especially when it comes to steering, for example, with an independent front suspension truck. And in this case they have really eliminated all of it. Throws itself around corners really well, and especially considering that it is a 1-to-1 gearbox in that Stealth XF gearbox, it's impressive. So let's see what else it can do. Now I do have the files for the extended wheel arches from Night Custom, so you could run a 4.7 size tire, since these are of course the tinier pin seekers at a 4.19. But seeing how it behaves, I don't really think that I'm going to use it, because those tiny tires, they kind of give like a fun limitation to the truck itself, especially combined with that independent front suspension. And that's something that will happen a lot more if you put a taller tire on there. One of the biggest benefits of it being questionable weather is that it's not overly crowded in the forest currently. So I can just go around with my camera and talk to you guys and girls without seeming like an absolute lunatic. I want to see if we can make it out to the edge where you can kind of see onto the fjord, see a tiny bit of the town as well, hopefully before the rain starts. Clearance wise, this setup is, well, I dare say it's one of the best setups that I've driven from Element. $300. If I personally would have the choice, I would skip the Sendero and I would go for the Utron. Also because I do really like the body style. I do think it's a successful interpretation of an FJ, without of course them paying for the licensing. Again, really happy to be back on YouTube, and I cannot express my gratitude enough for everybody who is sticking around, waiting for new content. It's not going to be paint every single week, just because I do like more complex paint schemes, but also sometimes I think we should perhaps just run a truck, or even just take it back to the basics. So what I'm thinking of doing is starting another paint series where we go from, we take it from the top basically. So in case you've never painted a truck before, I can imagine that a 17 color paint scheme is super intimidating. So kind of want to go back to the roots, see if we can do like a single dual color paint scheme, and then take it from there, just gradually start building it up. Let me know if that sounds interesting. Now, in order to really put the Utron to the test with its independent front suspension and its non-reducted gearbox, I think we should go to the sloped rock that is over here. It's also the same place where I have shot some footage with the Phoenix, with the Ready to Run Phoenix. It's just a great place to test not just tire grip, but also steering angles, and also the center of gravity, and just see the overall behavior of the truck right out of the box. So far for $300, this is really hard to beat. This pin seeker tire, it is a fun looking tire, I will give it that. So it has that marker dot, so that GPS locator. This is really good. The Phoenix was the first truck that actually made it up this rock without any modifications, and the Utron does the exact same, with the exception that of course it has independent front suspension, so that's pretty crazy. I can guarantee you that none of my other trucks have been able to make it up this rock without getting like some wheel weights or some other modifications, like some brass inserts inside of the axles. Also, this 5-slot motor, it performs really nice. It's very smooth, very predictable. The drag brake is good. I don't have a lot of complaints here. Right, let's get further out. Now, usually this place behind me is littered with like 5-year-olds, because it's a really popular place to go with, what do they call it? Barnehage. It's not, it's kindergarten. I might be becoming that Norwegian that I can't come up with the word for kindergarten anymore. Yeah, so everybody with their kindergarten comes here, and then they air these kids out over here in this place for a couple of hours get them all tired before they send them back to their parents. And then hopefully there won't be a handful once they get home. That's of course unless you feed them a ton of sugar, which you really don't want to do. So here already you can see a tiny bit like towards the fjord. So if you look all the way in the back over there, you see a bunch of water. And then on the other side, so the green right there, that's Sweden. And then this is, if you're like paranoid, and you have like a tinfoil hat, this is where you don't want to live, because then you get like glow in the dark balls. Now that front skid underneath that independent front suspension being so much more friendly towards the trails really is apparent also in these sections over here, because it's so much easier to just maneuver and get an angle where you can easily climb up a step like this. Provided of course that you get enough grip with your tires, but it's a really impressive little truck, this one. Also, you know, approach angle, despite it seeming like a pretty violent bumper on the front, really good. Like, check this out, I won't say it's vertical, but pretty close to being vertical, and it doesn't even touch. The only thing, but that could be because it's new, I do have the body that keeps popping out of the rock sliders in the side. But that could have also been one of those tumbles that I just had. But definitely something to keep an eye on. Otherwise just Velcro it into that slider tag, keep it in its spot. Bit difficult to tell, but over here the trail splits like 3-4 different ways. So you got one trail going up over there, and you have one that's pretty much straight ahead, and then there's a few of them actually veering off to the left, and that's where we are going to go. Looking at that incredible clearance in the front, I'm definitely thinking that I'm going to do an independent all around, just because that needs to be done. If nobody's doing that yet, then I should be the first to do that. Is Element also going to come out with perhaps a portal axle? Because is that like the only thing that we still lack now in that lineup? I think so, but are they going to come out with it? I don't know. You know what, all of their current setups are performing so well. Gatekeeper as well was a great performing truck that I don't really see a need for them to release anything portal related. Not sure you can see the million mosquitoes that are right around me over here. I can guarantee you that they all see me and they all have smelled my blood already, so I'm gonna be bitten any minute now. This whole section of forest is absolutely fantastic for some driving. There's no tire rub, there's nothing, there's no crazy noise coming from the driveline. It's all very smooth, very predictable, actually exceeding any of my expectations that I had beforehand. Of course, I have driven my Night Runner and also the first independent front suspension set that I mounted in my initial Sendero, in the first generation Sendero. Fun to drive, but definitely limited, and this one, it's as good, if not better. I think it's actually better than the Enduro Sport Edition, so the straight axle one. just because it offers a different range of possibilities with that independent front suspension. The more I look at this body, the more I think that Toyota should take some notes and actually produce one that looks like this, just because it is a cool looking thing. So it does actually work with that FJ Cruiser pickup body. What I would like to know in the comments is, when is the first time you noticed Element RC as a brand? Was it already with the Sendero? Was it with the Trail Walker? Was it with the Trail Runner perhaps, or the Night Runner? Or is this the very first one that you've seen? This Utron with its independent front suspension. This might actually be a good point to cut off today's video, in which we have had a shakedown of the Element RC Enduro Utron with the IFS 2 suspension, the Stealth XF gearbox, and a ton of cool stuff to look at. Again, entry-level truck, $299. It could be yours. Links are in the video description box. I think they put together, again, a very successful entry-level truck. Just pique people's interest a tiny bit. If you want to replicate your independent front suspension one-to-one size truck, then this is definitely a fantastic base to work from. So 12.8 inch wheelbase, you can still fit all of the aftermarket bodies that are available. Again, I think this was also a successful test with the Hollyland microphone. I'm not sure if this one was the C1 or the M1, because I always thought that the C1 was for camera one and the M1 was for mobile one, but apparently I've had that twisted as well a couple of times in referring people to these microphones, because then they got them and like, you know, it's for an iPhone and I need one for a DSLR. So make sure that you check out which one you would actually need. Dead cat comes included, or in this case I think we should perhaps refer to it as a dead kitten, seeing how tiny it is. Which is that little wind hood that you can put on top of the microphone to also successfully film in these type of conditions. So Hollyland, go check that out, and Element, of course, go check them out. Thanks so much for watching. Take care. Bye bye.
Test. We're back on.